Hello. I'm so glad you're joining me today on my Sleepytime Reading channel. Today we are back to the New York Times archives of 1851, moving on to September 20th. Today we're going to be taking a look at the New York City News Roundup from the Times from that date. If you listened to the previous episode, they had a thorough report of the background and approach of the execution of a convicted murderer named Aaron Stuckey. And today's report begins with telling us the outcome of that execution that was going to be on the previous day. So we'll start with that. This is New York City from the New York Times of September 20th, 1851. Execution of Stuckey. The execution of Aaron Stuckey has at last taken place and was witnessed by a large number of our citizens, who were admitted into the prison yard as temporary special deputy sheriffs for the preservation of peace. We give the details of the execution of the unfortunate culprit. 3 o'clock was the hour to which the execution of the doomed man was postponed. Therefore, crowds of citizens wended their way to the tombs long before the hour arrived, and by 2:30 o'clock every avenue and street leading to the Egyptian building was crowded to excess, and all appeared anxious to gain admittance within the massive walls. But when the hour of 3 o'clock arrived, no person was admitted, except such as were in possession of a document signifying their appointment by the sheriff as special deputy sheriffs. A few minutes after the specified time appointed for the execution, those who were entitled to admittance had passed in the Franklin and Leonard Street entrances, but yet remained a dense crowd of all sexes and sizes around the doors, and it was with great difficulty that Deputy Sheriffs Chase, Drake, Town, Sell, Williams, and others could prevent the masses from forcing their way through. Finally, the prison doors were closed, and the outsiders still retained their position in the street. Business in the prison was entirely suspended by order of Mr. Edmonds, the correct and most worthy keeper, and he surrendered the institution to the charge of the sheriff and his force, many of whom were stationed at various points to preserve order. As near as we could judge, there were about 600 spectators in the prison yard, among whom were several of our judicial officers, members of the common court, physicians, reporters of the public press, and others of various avocations. We will now proceed to lay before our readers a full description of the incidents connected with the execution, including the speech of the culprit. Appearance of the murderer. At an early hour of the morning, Reverend Mr. Gilbert proceeded to the cell of poor Stuckey, and there found him knelt by the side of his couch, praying fervently to his God. The clergyman remained with him throughout the day, and as the hour of 11 o'clock a.m. approached, he became weak and almost lost all self-possession. But when he was informed that the sheriff had postponed the execution for 4 or more hours, he then again rallied and seemed to revive in spirits. During the afternoon he was engaged in prayer and made every atonement for his acts to his Maker. As the hour for his final extermination advanced, he became more and more reconciled in his mind and resigned to meet the awful fate that awaited him. At 3:15 o'clock, he said he felt satisfied that there was no further chance or opportunity for him to escape his sentence of death, and feeling assured in his own mind that his heavenly Father would forgive him, he longed for the moment when his troubles would be put to an end. At 3:30 o'clock, the sheriff came up to the scaffold and called the roll of the sheriffs and jury, after which he proceeded to the cell of the culprit in company with his active and indefatigable assistant, Mr. James McDonough, where they attired themselves in black cockade hats, belts, and swords. By this time the murderer was dressed, and upon his arms being pinioned behind his back, he was brought out of the west wing of the prison and conducted around to the south wing, to the scaffold that was erected between the west side of the main prison and the outside wall. As the culprit was conducted through the crowd, they all fell back, forming a passageway, and everything was as silent as it is in the dead hour of the night. Outside him were his half-brother and the clergy, and while approaching the gallows he turned deathly pale, appeared to tremble at its sight, and, owing to his half-brother weeping bitterly, he became greatly excited and exhibited feelings of terror. Arrival of the culprit under the gallows. It was 11 minutes to 4 o'clock when the murderer reached the gallows, at which time the rope was immediately placed round his neck, and in bidding his last farewell to his brother, He shook him strongly by the hand, and exclaimed, "Lord Jesus, have mercy on my soul. God bless you. I hope I shall be better off." Here his brother almost fainted, and was removed from the view of the revolting spectacle. All was now arranged to carry the execution into effect, and the culprit seemed to stand more erect and firm than he had at any other previous point during the day. Here he was left alone, and as he raised his eyes to the heavens he spoke as follows, which was delivered in a clear and distinct tone. "My dear fellow citizens, I now stand here before you to die, and I hope and believe my soul will be saved. I trust my God has forgiven me. You must all beware of rum, for it has been the cause of placing me here to meet this awful fate. I warn you all not to touch into the drinking bowl, for it would eventually get the advantage of you all. I am so sorry to die under the gallows, but the laws must be carried out, and die I must. Remember what I say. Rum has done it all, and I hope all who are here will take warning by it. God bless you all. God have mercy on my soul, and receive me into your kingdom. Goodbye. God bless you and my friends." Reverend Mr. Camp then made a very eloquent and appropriate prayer with tears trickling down his cheeks, and was followed by Mr. McDonough, who shook hands with the culprit and bid him farewell. The sheriff then took him by the hand and said, "Stooky, this is one of the most painful duties I ever performed. I am forced to do my duty, so goodbye and God bless you. I sincerely hope you will be happy in the other world." The culprit could not withhold his feelings, and he again spoke. He said, "Farewell. All mind what I tell you, and let rum alone." Turning his eyes to the sheriff, "I may meet you in heaven. I hope I shall. I thank my friends. I thank the good and worthy sheriff and others for what they have done for me. God bless the sheriff, and heaven bless you all. Goodbye." The final execution. At precisely 4 o'clock, Mr. McDonough pulled the black cap over the culprit's face, and all being ready, Sheriff Carnley raised a heavy broadaxe, and with one firm and steady blow he cut into the rope. The weights, 5 iron 56-pound weights, fell, and the murderer was ascended into the air in the twinkling of an eye. He was hoisted up the gallows with such velocity that his neck was instantly broken, and in the course of 7 minutes Dr. Seidel and Dr. Crane pronounced him lifeless. He hung for just 30 minutes, when his body was lowered down upon a straw bed and removed to the dead house, where it was placed into a mahogany coffin and delivered to his friends. Thus ends the existence of another human being for the murder of his fellow man, and we trust his awful fate will always be remembered by those who in the heat of passion or otherwise may be tempted to strike a deadly blow. In closing this report, we cannot omit acknowledging our obligations to Sheriff Carnley, Mr. McDonough, Deputy Sheriffs Chase, Wood, and others for facilities rendered us in the discharge of our duty. National Temperance Society. The National Temperance Society proposes to hold another quarterly meeting at the Broadway Tabernacle on Monday evening next, 22nd inst., at 7:30 o'clock. Addresses will be delivered by the Reverend D.C. Lansing, Reverend S.A. Corey, and E. Fitch Smith, Esquire. The exercises will be enlivened by music, vocal and instrumental, by the Alleghenians. The society above named hopes to combine the efforts and influence of the community so as to arrest and roll back the ruinous tide of intemperance, and if they can present to the public any feasible plan for the amelioration of its evils, they should be promptly sustained by the public. The Industrial Temperance Home at the 5 Points, supported by the society, has done and is doing a great amount of good in the reform, employment, and full restoration of some scores of inebriates that were entirely abandoned by their friends, and upon whom the star of hope had not for many years shed a single ray. Were this all the good that the society has accomplished, it would be entitled to public gratitude and confidence. Common Council. The Board of Aldermen held a session last evening. The only business of importance that was transacted was the passage of the bill for the enlargement of the Battery, notwithstanding the objections of Mayor Kingsland. This, we believe, settles the question, and the Battery will now be enlarged. The Board of Assistants did not transact any business of general importance, but adjourned over to Monday and a warm supper that was waiting for them. Fatal accident on the Hudson River Railroad. Yesterday about 8 o'clock p.m., a brakeman, whose name we could not learn, was instantly killed near Peekskill by being thrown from a train on the Hudson River Railroad when it was under full headway. The body of the unfortunate man was horribly mangled and was conveyed to the residence of his afflicted family at the village of New Hamburg. Serious accidents. A lady by the name of Mrs. Mary Coogan, residing at No. 180 Elizabeth Street, was very severely injured yesterday morning by being run over in Houston Street by a horse and wagon. She was conveyed home. Yesterday morning, a carpenter named Frederick Rice fell from the third story of a new building, corner of 86th Street and 3rd Avenue, and was terribly injured. The 19th Ward Police conveyed the unfortunate man to his residence, where he received medical attention. A blooming cargo. The packet ship Irving, which arrived at this port on Wednesday, brought 220 female and only 10 male passengers. They were a rosy-cheeked, healthy-looking bevy of Irish girls, and of the whole 220, only 2 were married. Fire in Wall Street. About 2 o'clock this morning, a fire was discovered in the 5th story of the building at number 29 Wall Street. The room in which the fire was found was occupied by Tappan, Casalier & Co., banknote engravers. It was discovered by a telegraph messenger, and the alarm being given, the firemen were soon on the spot and extinguished the fire before much damage had been done. It was impossible to ascertain the origin of the fire, but it is supposed to have caught from a furnace. Fire in 39th Street. At 2 o'clock yesterday morning, a fire broke out in a wooden shanty at 39th Street near the 10th Avenue, and before it was extinguished, the old rookery was consumed, and an adjoining frame dwelling considerably damaged by the flames that communicated with the roof. The Pictorial Drawing Room Companion. Judging from the latest improvements to this attractive publication, it is destined to occupy the same position in New York that the Illustrated News occupies in London, while its cheapness should give it at least an equal circulation. The number for the present week contains no less than 9 prominent engravings, nearly all illustrative of national or local subjects. Among these we may enumerate a beautiful portrait of the pioneer steamer of the Boston and Liverpool line, the SS Lewis, a graphic sketch of the late brilliant regatta at Marblehead, a view of the late awful military execution at Havana from drawings made on the spot, a likeness of Mr. Collins, the founder of American Ocean Steam Navigation, a perspective view of the interior of the Crystal Palace, and other illustrations of immediate interest. The literary portion of the number is as fresh, piquant, and varied as the pictorial department. The price is, however, the most striking feature of the publication. Think of 16 folio pages on fine paper with a portfolio of engravings for 6 pence, and the office is at number 151 Nassau Street, New York. Miss Laura Addison, who arrived in this country in the Pacific, has been engaged to appear at the Broadway Theatre and will shortly make her debut before an American audience. She is called the Rachel of the English stage, her style not being of the stilted order, but remarkable for its natural, inartificial, and yet artistic simplicity. Fireman's Visit. Hydraulian Fire Company No. 1 from Providence, Rhode Island, visit New York on the 24th inst. They will be the guests of No. 42, a sufficient guarantee that they will meet with the most flattering hospitality. Hydraulian No. 1 is the crack company of Rhode Island. The brakeman who was killed on the Hudson River Railroad yesterday was named Kennerthy. He was married and resided at New Hamburg. Suicide of a mother and murder of her child. Yesterday morning, about 5 o'clock, a German woman residing at 91 Leonard Street and her little child were both found lying dead in a small bedroom on the 2nd floor of the premises. It appears that the mother administered an overdose of opium to the child and then swallowed a large dose of morphine herself, which soon put an end to their earthly existence. We were unable to learn any further particulars attending this melancholy affair, but will give full details in our morning edition. Since the above was written for last evening's edition, Coroner Gear proceeded to the premises and found that the mother was not dead as first reported, but the child was a corpse, and upon inquiry it was found to be the offspring of an ignorant German woman named Barbara Hensler, who, from the evidence adduced on the inquest, appears to have administered to her child an overdose of opium without knowing its effect. The child was very restless, and the mother was innocent in giving it the opium. Therefore, a verdict in accordance with the above facts was rendered. Fire in Grand Street. About 7 o'clock yesterday evening, a fire was discovered in the hat establishment of Mr. George W. Clark at number 246 Grand Street. The firemen were promptly on the ground and speedily extinguished the flames with trifling damage. Fire. Last evening about 9 o'clock, there was an alarm of fire in the 6th District. The fire was in a lamp store in Rivington Street near Willett and was caused by the explosion of a camphine lamp. It was quickly extinguished, and the damage was but trifling. In order to accommodate the public, the East River Total Abstinence Society will tomorrow dedicate another room in the building at number 5 Chatham Square. Mrs. L. Buckley of Akron, Ohio, Miss Burley, and Wilkins Beck Smith will address the audience. And that's it for the news from New York City from September 20th, 1851, New York Times. Thank you again for joining me at my Sleepytime Reading channel. If you enjoy what I'm doing, please do hit that like button and subscribe to follow for future updates and more readings. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, comments, requests, please do leave a comment. I will be back soon with more Sleepytime Reading. Next time we'll be returning to science and technology with another chapter of How Things Are Made. Till then, bye-bye.